the Tuesday, March 16th, 2021 special meeting of the Frankfurt Plant Board. At 5 o'clock, we're operating under the governor's executive order regarding video teleconferencing during the pandemic. And with that, I'd like to ask Ms. Poe to call the roll.
Member Hale?
Here.
Member Cubine?
Here.
Member Mason?
Here.
Member Snyder?
Here.
Member Dutton Mitchell?
Here.
Okay, we've got a quorum. Next item is item 2.1, consider approval of the minutes for February 16th, 2021 board meeting. If everybody has a copy of the minutes, are there any corrections or changes? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Next item, item 3, is consider approval and updated affirmative action plan for women and minorities and affirmative action plan for individuals with disabilities and protected veterans for 2020 and 2021. Nichelle Brown and Carol Dawson will present. Nichelle, are you on?
Yes. Good evening, board. I'm sorry.
Good. How you doing?
Good. Good evening, board chair and members of the board. Staff requests the board consider approval of FPB's voluntary affirmative action plan for women and minorities for 2020 and 2021, and the AAP for individuals with disabilities and protected veterans for 2020 and 2021. Copies of the AAP and the audit report were provided to board members in advance. The AAP is a management tool designed to ensure equal employment opportunity for analyzing workforce and recruitment data. For job groups indicating women and or minorities are not employed at a rate to be expected given their availability, the AAP includes goals and action items to address the underutilization. The AAP audit includes a review of all employment actions, hiring, termination, and promotions in 2019. In filling job openings on a regular ongoing basis, FPB seeks to hire the best qualified candidate for each position without regards to sex, race, ethnicity, religion, national origin, or any other protected status. In recruiting for external candidates, FPB consistently advertises with the local newspaper, FPB's cable channel, the internet, including FPB's website, and notifies the state departments of employment. We also utilize community and other resources to generate a diverse pool of candidates. Since the end of the AAP reporting period, December 2019, FPB has hired 11 new employees, including 2 females. I have Carol Dawson here, so please welcome Carol Dawson of EEO Guidance. Carol will present an overview of the AAP and audit report and her recommendation. Ms. Dawson is a former senior compliance officer and area director for the U.S. Department of Labor, Office of Federal Contract Compliance Program. Ms. Dawson provides consulting services and training on equal employment opportunity and diversity and inclusion. She has worked with FPB since approximately 2003. Carol? Ms. Dawson, you still have you're on mute. Ms. Dawson, you're on mute still.
Zach, are you able to unmute her?
Are you able?
It should be up in the top right-hand corner of your picture, or there's a button down at the bottom left.
There you are. There
Can you hear
are.
me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Good.
yay. Okay, well, Nichelle knows I really do not like Zoom meetings. I'm always on time. I'm very punctual, but 10 minutes before this meeting, my router went down and I went into panic. I was like, what do? I called my husband. He told me what to do. I did it. I'm here. So, and and then I was muted. So I don't know how that even happened. But anyway, very nice to be with you here. Thank you for having me. I did want to congratulate Nichelle. I have not seen her since she moved into the new position and was promoted. And I think that was a very wise choice by the board. And because of my background, I treat all of my clients as if they are federal contractors, and I'm actually auditing them. And at one point in time, Warner, way back in 2002, when I started working with the Frankfurt Plant Board, he told me to stop it because he said I was scaring all the managers. So I have kind of backed off a little bit of that through the years, but I still look at everything from that same lens of being an auditor for the government and making sure that people aren't discriminating. So that's the way I look at Frankfurt Plant Board and all of my clients. The first thing I did want to say is I wanted to talk very briefly about jurisdiction. You are a government entity, so your requirements are not that you have a written affirmative action plan for the executive order, which is minorities and women, but you do have to have are required by law to have a veterans and also individuals with disability, AAP. So you do have those. The 11246 for women and minorities is considered a voluntarily written affirmative action plan. And it's kind of a strange thing the government has done. They said for government entities, you have to have everything in, you have to be in compliance with everything that's written into this executive order, and it's quite extensive. But just for the government entities, you don't have to have it in writing. So you still have to be in compliance with it, and there's no way to know you're in compliance with it unless you run the numbers. So that's what Frankfurt Plant Board decided to do in, I think, 2003, was to start writing an every other year AAP. And we initially were doing it just for 1 year. So that meant 1 year was skipped every other year. But I spoke with Nichelle and Hans and Gary just a couple of weeks ago, and we decided to incorporate both years. So it's still going to be every other year, but it will incorporate the full 2 years. So you'll get more of an analysis that is accurate to show what has happened during the last 2 years, not just the last year. Let's see, what else did I want to, okay, I think that covers everything there on jurisdiction. Does anybody have any question on jurisdiction? Great, okay. And everybody can still hear me, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Just want to make sure. I could be just talking away. All right, the bottom line results of the AAP, we've never had any issues. What I do is I analyze the AAP and I give that information to Nichelle, and then Nichelle goes through and she justifies anything that might be a red flag. There's always red flags for every client. Anyone who writes an AAP is going to have red flags. Red flags don't mean you've done anything incorrect. It just means take a look at this hiring activity or this promotion that you had last year, or this group of terminations because it had an adverse impact against women, minorities, people with disabilities, or veterans. And so everybody has red flags. That, again, it doesn't mean you have discrimination, but it means take a look at this. And so your HR department always looks at that and comes back and justifies any red flag that there is. And they have done that this year, just as they have in the past. So we don't have any issues. There were a couple of questions, or there were a couple of areas. It was, I've written them, I can't find them right at the moment, but we had officials and managers, officials and administrators had underutilization for women and minorities. So that's a continuing effort to recruit and bring women and minorities into the applicant flow when you hire people into management or promote people into management positions. And then the technicians were underutilized for women, and then the one of the craft positions were underutilized for women. And so that means you just have to take affirmative action, get out there and recruit. It doesn't mean you hire or promote anybody who's not the best qualified. As a matter of fact, that's always the best practice. to hire the best qualified individuals. But it means the federal government affirmative action requirements means that you have to go out and find those people and bring them into your applicant flow or your promotion into your employment consideration. So that's the way that came out on your utilization. I didn't see any other real problems. Oh, it's skilled craft workers for females. That's what it was. So the red flags have all been justified. And I think, Nichelle, didn't you give everybody a copy of some of the information that okay, I see some heads nodding.
Yes.
You already did that. Okay. All right. And there were a few questions from board members. I asked that if people would please give me your advanced questions so that I can make sure that I have the information to give to you today. And one question was, why isn't the general manager included in the compensation in the AAP? And the answer to that is back into
Ms. Dawson, you have paused. Okay.
And Michelle, it looks like she may have lost internet connection.
Okay.
And
Okay.
Yeah, she said she was having some router or modem problems.
Okay. Well, I know I can answer the question concerning why isn't the general manager included. When she first started, a current general or the previous general manager didn't feel like there were any comparables for him to be compared to. So he just asked that he'll be removed from the data. However, if the board would like us to continue to include the general manager, we can do so going forward. As far as the other questions, I do believe I was able to send them to the board member that had requested those, and I can get those out to all the other board members.
Let me ask this, Michelle.
I'm sorry.
Is including the general manager in terms of best practices or what's kind of standard practice that most agencies do? What would be the best practice or the practice that's observed by most agencies?
I believe this is Ms. Dawson calling. Give me 1 second. I'm sorry.
John, you think we can come back to this topic and move forward until she can get, you know?
When Nichelle comes on, we could do the two public hearings and then come back.
Ms. Dawson had asked, her whole PC is frozen, but she is okay with being put on speakerphone, if that is okay with everyone.
Has she finished the majority of her presentation?
Ms. Dawson, have you finished the majority of your presentation?
Yeah, I just have a couple more answers to questions. That's it.
Okay, well, why don't you go on and do those then, if that's okay with you, Steve?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I apologize. This technology that there's just no depending on it.
You need Frankfurt Plainboard internet.
Yeah, I'm in Jeffersonville, Indiana, so you guys aren't responsible for this.
If you had us, there wouldn't be a problem.
I get you. I believe you 100%. Okay, so we're going to be including, Gary has said that he wants to go ahead and include the general manager in all future AAPs. So they will be included. That's not an issue. The next question was, there was a concern about the compensation on the video producer director position, as it appeared that the male employees were making considerably more. Nichelle looked at that, and I had looked at it also, and immediately the answer is that we didn't just consider the job title of video producer. We looked at the entire grade, and that grade included cable construction line workers, dispatchers, facility locators, meter readers, and service order representatives, and so forth. So when we looked at just that particular job title, which has one male and two females, there were no problems. The salaries were as they should have been based on years in service, etc. So that wasn't an issue. And the last question that we had was basically a typo. Quality assurance didn't work real well that day. And it had stated that a minority employee custodian was making 90% less than all the non-minority employees. And that absolutely is not the case. And thank you, whoever posed that question, thank you for seeing that and noticing that that was incorrect. So it should have read that the minority employee is making 90% of the average salary of the non-minorities. So that was just simply a typo, and that has been corrected. Are there any questions? Does anybody have any questions? I don't know if I think I could hear you.
Mr. Cubine had a question concerning, is it best practice to include the general manager? Am I correct? Was that your question, Mr. Cubine?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yes, that's a great question, and absolutely yes. If you were required to have the written affirmative action plan, you would have to include the top level individual in that plan. So yes.
Are there any things, Nichelle or Carol? Are there any other items in the report that we need to be looking at, or anything else we need to be doing? I know, Carol, you talked about, in terms of recruitment and improving our selection, getting more people involved in the process, for applicants and so forth. Is there anything else we need to be doing or should be doing, or is that pretty much, in terms of outreach or things you'd suggest or recommend?
Actually, the only other thing, the primary thing that I recommend is training. I've been training there annually until last year, and quite frankly, I guarantee never boring training. And I've been there so many times that your employees have started to zone out on me. And I told at the time Diane, I said, Diane, I can't do it. And she said, no, that's fine. I said, no, I if they're bored, I can't do it. So I think, Nichelle, didn't you guys have somebody else do the training last year?
No, we didn't have a different training. We did online training for a lot of our employees.
Okay, yeah, that's right. With the pandemic, you wouldn't, but I'm sure that Frankfurt Plant Board will continue the training efforts, and I applaud that. Actually, to be honest with you, Frankfurt Plant Board is one of my favorite clients. You guys have always gone above and beyond. You've always anything I've ever asked that you do, there's never hey, why do we need to do this? Are we required to do it? It's just like, hey, if we can do this to make our employees feel more respected and more included, let's do it. And so I've never seen Frankfurt Plant Board ever do anything that was against what I consider respectful and equal for all employees. So I've been real impressed with Frankfurt Plant Board, and I just really have never had anything negative to say about your practices and policies and procedures.
Nichelle, are you planning for training this year?
Yes, I'm working to get online training so we can continue to social distance and, still battling with the pandemic. So yes.
Okay. Do any other board members have questions of Nichelle or Carol? Steve?
Yeah, I have a question about the process. Who determines the rate of availability, and how is it determined for a given?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Availability is determined by the United States Department of Census, and they update it every 10 years, and it's and it takes them about 2 or 3 years to get the EEO portion of it out for everybody. So right now we're still using the 2010. 2010 census. But we look at that data and we compare it to what you actually have in regards to utilization by job group, by minority, by female, by individuals with disabilities, and also by veterans. And so we do pull that data directly from census.
So that data though comes from where? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how, the federal government would know individual locales. the availability of these groups within, within
Right.
a given area, geographic area.
Right. Well, you guys, Frankfurt Plant Board every year gives me that data. In other words, we recruit for these positions in these counties, and then we take the minority and female representation by job title or job group within that area, and that's what we use for our analysis.
So we give you the positions we are recruiting for, and you determine whether there's the amount of availability in this area within the counties that we designate.
Right. Once we know, and actually we've been working with you guys for years. So once we know, or we're given that data, we just automatically plug those numbers, those availability numbers into the analysis and compare them with what you actually have in regards to utilization. And then that's why we know you have 3 underutilized job groups.
Well, I guess I'm still not understanding where, let's say you needed an accountant. How do you determine how many available accountants there are in our given locale, in the area that we might attract employees from?
I may be misunderstanding the question.
What I'm asking is I noticed in here that it talks about, as you said, utilization, underutilization, and those things, and it's based on availability. And I'm trying to determine who determines what positions are available, what makes up the demographic makeup of a certain position, and how it is determined.
Well, it's strictly off the census data. We take it, right off the census data, and they put out an EEO report every year, every 10 years. Basically, that tells you this is how many minority secretaries that we've got in this county. This is how many, by race and gender, and they aren't quite there with the individuals with disabilities or veterans, but they are with minorities and females. So they come back and they assimilate all of that data, and they provide that to us in a report, and we use that report to figure the availability. So technically, you figure 10 years have gone by, it may not be as accurate as we want it to be, but the census is never going to be taking that, acquiring that information more than every 10 years. So we have to use, and right now we're using basically old data right now today, this year and next year. But once they update it, we look good again, and everything changes a little bit. Everything shifts a little bit. But that's basically how we do it. When you fill out the census, you fill it out, and you tell them what your job title is, what your race is, what your gender is, what your age is, all of those things, and they incorporate all that information into the EEO report. Yeah. And then we take it directly off of that.
I understand that, but no offense to you, I just think, one, I don't think the census data adequately reflects what's available, and two, you're right, it does get old fast. So I just think we need to find and outside of this exercise, we need to find a different way or another way, a supplemental way to determine the availability of different positions, because we're sitting here in relative to Kentucky anyway, the heart of professionalism and those types of positions, and it doesn't seem like we can find people.
Right. Well, now, did you say professionals?
Well, I know. I'm using professional because I'm looking. I look at the top of our organization chart, and I don't see many minorities, and I guess at the top, women. And I know that's strictly not about just this plan, because our staff is relatively young. I'll say that respectfully to everyone. And so they're, you're not expecting them to be leaving. So I understand some of the reasons why.
Right. Well, you were underutilized for minorities and women, both in your top level positions. That is correct. And then professionals, you guys look good. The only other two were technicians and then the skilled craft positions. And those were just for females. So according to the availability data that we have to work with now, currently, you don't look too bad. I mean, it's not bad, but you do have areas that you need to work on. And those are the three job groups that need some attention. And I don't know any way to acquire that availability data other than from the census. And if there's another way, it's going to be new to me. I've never heard of that. So
I do understand from your perspective that I totally agree with what you're saying. I'm just saying from a local perspective, I think there are additional ways of finding people.
Oh, okay. And if you're referring to internally, absolutely.
I'm talking about just in the locality.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, and that's part of the affirmative action. You need to get out there and find where they are. Where are the women? I tell people, they'll say, where should I recruit minorities? And I say, go to your traditionally Black churches in the area, and sometimes they'll post jobs for their congregation. There's lots of creative ways that you can take to bring people in your local area into your applicant flow. Specifically minorities and women. And a lot of areas have, probably Lexington even does have a group called Women in Construction. And, and a lot that, people with affirmative action requirements will tap into that. And so that works that works well for them. Yeah. So there's lots of, groups like that I think you might be referring to, that Frankfurt Plant Board might want to reach out to or find out whether they even exist in your areas, but reach out to them if they do.
And I have a list of our recruitment sources that I can send to all of the board members. And Kentucky State University is on there, Kentucky Commission of Women. So we do reach out to the local community when we have job postings.
Yes, yeah. Frankfurt Plant Board has always done that. They've always had a really good recruitment effort for women and minorities.
Hey,
it can always be better. You can always search, dig a little deeper and search a little harder. So that's not something that I would just say doesn't need to happen. It can always happen.
Any other questions from any other board members? Catherine?
If I could just circle back real quick to the correction made about from the original report from the about the custodial position and being 90% under instead of making 90% of the average. I know that's a 10% discrepancy there from the average. Did we have an explanation for that?
Yeah, Nichelle, did you want to address that? Because Nichelle did look into that.
I'm not for sure. Is that where? Oh, that was where the individual was hired. She had less time in the position, so she came in at a lower rate and hadn't had a chance to have the time in the position to receive promotions or cost of livings or things of that nature.
Oh, Catherine, that's a really good, I think, Catherine, were you the one that asked that question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm glad you did ask that, because that's one of the things we spoke of doing in the future, was including time in that particular grade. Right now, we're only analyzing the compensation data by time in service, so the date they were hired by Frankfurt Plant Board, and we don't have the data to incorporate time in position. So I think, Nichelle, we agreed that Frankfurt Plant Board would supply that information for the next AAP, and we'll plug those numbers in, and it'll come out. I guarantee it'll come out different for some of the red flags. You'll have less red flags.
Correct.
And one last, kind of following up on the last discussion about essentially being more creative in our recruiting efforts, particularly for the couple flagged areas. Is this plan reflecting improvements or other ideas to address the need to be more creative in that area?
You're asking, does the AAP address that?
Yes.
Not specifically. It simply states it's an analysis of the numbers, and it states these are the jobs where you need to be able to show that you affirmatively recruited for specifically for minorities or women, and you would have to be able to provide that if you would ever go through an audit, which, by the way, you won't ever go through because you're a government entity. If someone were to file a complaint, like a veteran or disability complaint with the federal government against Frankfurt Plant Board, then they might have to provide that. You may have to provide that data, but no, the AAP does not supply specific recruitment opportunities or affirmative ways that you can make up the difference so that you're not underutilized.
Okay. And maybe this is a better way to phrase my question. So, Nichelle, has that need to develop some more creative ways to recruit, has that happened? Is that down on paper?
No, not yet.
Okay. Is that something we're going to do?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, based on her recommendations, have we come up with the new creative ways? Is that what you're asking? No,
Yeah.
We're in the process. We're working on it.
Okay.
When do you think we might have, based on Catherine's question, Michelle, when do you think the board might have a chance to see that?
In the upcoming months, I can keep you updated on what we're doing, and I can give you more information on what we're currently doing. So maybe a little bit after budget time, would that work?
Maybe in July?
Yes.
Does that work for you, Catherine?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. Let's plan on, Kathy, if you would, go on and flag that to make sure that's on the agenda in July.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments from any other board member? If not, do we have a motion to accept the plan that's in front of us, the approval of the updated affirmative action plan?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Plan's adopted. Nichelle, Carol, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry, my technology didn't work. I wish I was under your utilities.
Yeah, we do too.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay. Mr. Mason, this is the part I know you love.
Yeah, let me clear my throat.
Okay, let's go.
Mr. Chairman, before we do that, let me just say, as y'all might be able to be aware, I'm still at work. They're still going on. If my video cranks out, that means I've been pulled out. I might have a conference committee I need to staff. So if I head out, then I'll be back if I can be back. But I've talked to John about some of the things on the agenda, so we should be good. So if I back out, it's not a criticism of Steve for handling the public hearing.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
Okay, Steve. John, thank you. Steve, you got all of 4. You got all of item number 4. You got 2 hearings. Take it away, buddy.
Yeah. Okay, this hearing will come to order. My name is Steve Mason. I have been requested by the board to conduct this hearing. With me today are board members and staff of the Frankfurt Electric and Water Plant Board. We are here to receive comments regarding tariff revisions related to AMI development and opt-out. This public hearing was advertised in accordance with the regulations for public notification and appeared in the weekend, March the 6th through the 7th, 2021 edition of the State Journal newspaper. To conduct this hearing in an organized fashion, we have asked that anyone wishing to comment register via email with Kathy Poe, Kathy Lindsay. This hearing will be conducted informally and voluntarily by the Frankfurt Electric and Water Plant Board in order to accept comments on the above items. Both oral and written comments will be accepted. Any and all persons present who wish to make a statement will be afforded an opportunity to do so. If you have a written statement to accompany your oral presentation, a copy of the written statement should be provided to the board prior to your presentation. Oral presentation should be limited to no more than 3 minutes. If necessary, I will interrupt and request the presentation to be completed due to this time limit. I may ask questions of any person presenting oral comments where it is necessary to clarify the nature or substance of the comments. The board reserves the right to answer questions at a later date. It is the job of the board to fairly consider various points of view and information. We want public input and involvement, and I hope you do not find our standard procedures restrictive. Additional oral comments and written comments will be accepted and considered if they are submitted no later than the end of normal business hours on Monday, April the 19th, 2021. To submit a comment, please contact FPB at area code 502-352-4372 or on our website at www.fpb.cc. Before we open the floor for comments, Mr. Travis McCullough will provide a summary of the details.
All right. Well, good evening, members of the board. We've obviously had quite a bit of discussion leading up to this meeting about opt-out, but I'll recap kind of a brief summary of where we stand today and the policy as it's been presented to the board at this point. Obviously, testing has been progressing well over the past few months, so we're getting closer to that July date where we will be ready to begin the full system deployment. So in preparation of that, the staff has proposed an opt-out policy for customers who choose not to have an AMI meter or don't wish to have an AMI meter due to privacy or any other concerns. The policy includes a one-time fee of $100 to recover the costs of any meter changeouts or back office processes. And it also includes a $21 fee to recover the ongoing costs associated with manual reading. These numbers are in line with general industry standards, and they're also very similar to a PSC, a Kentucky PSC approved policy that we referenced. These fees assume approximately 1 to 2% of our customers may elect to opt out. Are there any other general opt-out questions you would like to have answered? Or AMI
Steve?
questions in general?
Are there any other questions?
Steve, at the last meeting, or Travis, at the last meeting, Steve had asked the question about the $100 fee and the $21 fee. And, you know, in terms of like low income customers and any hardship cases. And were you able to do any research about either PSC, or I know you said you'd looked at Duke Power and a couple others. Were you able to do any research to determine if they made any allowances or accommodations for those situations?
I did find some example utilities that had those types of policies where there were income qualifying adjustments to those fees. So the ones that I was able to find, it looked like they were relying on existing income qualifying programs. So say they already had some rate relief type of program in place. I also had some discussions internally. My understanding is we don't currently track that information. So I think from my discussions with the finance and other groups, I think if we wanted to do that, at least especially early in the process, we would need to rely on kind of those existing programs we work with currently for low income customers.
Maybe like SNAP or
right, exactly,
IEP or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Because we just don't have that data available and we don't have any existing programs like that in place internally, at least, I think that would be the most practical option at this time.
What kind of relief did they give customers? Do you?
Yeah, it varied. It looked like a few of them were kind of half on each portion, somewhere in that neighborhood. Again, they're kind of all over the place, but if I were to throw an average out there, I think it's somewhere in the, in our case, somewhere in the, $50 one-time fee. Some of them we looked at, I think they possibly waived that entirely, that one time, and then, maybe you would have half the recurring fee.
Okay. And that's something we can consider after you get comments in and so forth, and then we bring it back next time for a final decision?
Yes, my understanding is that the policy will be voted on. My intent, at least, was the policy would be voted on in April, right, at the next regular meeting. So we could try and integrate some of that language, perhaps, into the policy.
Okay.
If that's what the board would like to do, of course.
Okay. Thanks, Steve.
And I agree with you, John. Thanks for bringing that up, because I am still interested in that. And maybe, the policy is, if we establish some kind of income level, that if the customer wants to pursue some reduction, that they give some kind of proof of the level of income. Because their records are confidential, I would assume here. To who I don't know who I'm asking that question to.
Okay.
Yeah.
But again, I think that may be a potential place to, let them prove their level of income, and we can, in the meantime, establish a level of income where we think a rate reduction or a waiver or whatever might be appropriate.
I had a question on the paragraph right under where the little fee schedule is. It says that customers electing to opt out of AMI prior to having their existing meter changed will not be charged the opt-out processing fee and the standard meter install charge. You want to just touch on that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So the one-time fee, basically, it's intended to recover the cost of sending a technician to someone's home to change out their AMI meter with a non-AMI meter. So if during deployment, the plan will be all customers will be notified before we're at their home or business. If they notify us in advance, they don't want their meter changed, they're choosing to opt out, they will not have to pay that fee because we obviously won't have that additional cost of changing their meter again. And that's also, that's very similar to what we saw in some of those PSC approved policies, that if you let us know before we change your meter, we're not going to apply that one-time fee.
But
Steve, I'm sorry.
Go on.
Could I ask one more question, Travis?
Sure.
Could you research if we went with an opt-out, if we went with some type of opt-out policy, that's what the board decided to do, and if people were assessed a $21 or $11 or whatever it might be fee, and then they needed utility assistance, would those opt-out fees be allowable charges for them to get? For example, would LIHEAP recognize those as allowable charges, or would they disallow that cost as part of a past due bill? If you could find that out, I mean, it'd be interesting to see if people then, had trouble paying a bill, would that opt-out fee then be money that they couldn't get any assistance for?
Understood, yep.
Okay.
We can get that answer.
Yes.
So are there any other questions? So do we move on to the next
Steve,
item?
I'm sorry. I have one. Travis, you mentioned the experience of that 1 to 2%. You think 1 to 2% would opt out with a fee or without a fee? I mean, could you clarify that a little bit? And is that based on experience from other spots? And is there anybody that doesn't charge a fee to opt out?
I'm sure there are some that don't charge any fees. I would have to imagine. I don't know any off the top of my head. That 1 to 2% assumes there is a fee. We think there are still going to be some, regardless. They're just not going to have an AMI meter, no matter you know, how hard we try to convince them or educate them on all the benefits of AMI. We think we're just going to have some, hopefully a very small number that are going to be willing to pay the fee and just have the
Okay.
money.
All right.
There are, I'm aware of some situations where, well, I can research and see if there are no fee situations. I'm not aware of any off the top of my head. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Travis.
Well, are we on to 4.2?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
You don't have to reread that either, Steve. You can
thank you.
just say we're using the same language and we'll roll right on into it.
Good point. We're conducting a public hearing regarding the establishing terms of service for next band stream. Before we take the floor comments, and the comments, as Kathy noted, my opening comments would have been the same comments with the new subject. But before we open the floor for comments, Mr. Harvey Couch will provide a summary of the details.
Thank you, Mr. Mason, members of the board. As we prepare to deploy the application for the Next Band Stream video service to our customers, we just needed to establish some terms of use. So this will be for the customers. We'll just need to accept them when they launch the application or when they use the application, and they basically define the who and where and how the customers can use the app. There's no fees or charges, or it just sort of defines the customer's rights and our rights in using the application. So happy to answer any questions you guys might have on this item.
I have one. Is there any way that you can just have a really brief bullet point summary of the important things that people should know versus people having to actually read all of that? Because if people are like me, you know, you glance at it, you say, yeah, I agree. And you really don't know what you're agreeing to.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if we keep lawyers in business if we do that, but I don't know if Hans, you know, we could certainly work to provide a summary of the language, you know, of the fine print essentially, but provide a high level summary of the points. Does that, Hans, I don't know if you want to chime in, if you think that's a reasonable thing we could do.
Yes, sir. We can do that. We can provide a summary of the material.
And we just include that in the terms of use, sort of at the header or at the top. Is that what you're thinking, Ms. Hale?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, sure.
Are there any other questions? Back to you, John.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next item, 5.1. David Denton, give us an update on both our financial condition and also an update on our past dues, our cutoffs, and our amount of money that at this point we're still looking at in terms of past due bills. Mr. Denton.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, we're going to do a combo here of talk about financials and also talk about the impact of COVID-19 to the financials. And I have bring in Cassie Estel in customer service as well. I'll talk briefly about the big picture on how we usually run with past dues and where we are today. So since the plant board went to 2 billing cycles in May of 2017, the plant board typically rolls around $780,000 in past due balances month to month. When COVID hit and throughout the pandemic, as we were required to not perform service disconnections, we saw that balance increase all the way up to approximately $3.2 million at its high in October of 2020. At the end of February, our most recent information we have, we're now down to $2.7 million in past due bills. A significant amount of those have started payment plans that we're working through. I'll go ahead. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. On page 55 of the board packet, I have some charts there to show the number of accounts and the dollar amount over time. You can see there that about 83% of our total past due balances are residential versus the other 17% being business. And by far, 40% of that total outstanding past due balance is our electric service of just about $1.1 million. So hopefully we'll see that number to continue to come down every time. The last few months, we've been able to see that number drop and reduce some of our bad debt estimates. But I'd like to turn it over to Cassie Estel, our customer service supervisor, to give you just a little bit more info on what February looked like with customer service at FPB. Cassie?
Hi, good evening, members of the board. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to give you an update on where we were. We did resume our normal billing and disconnect processes in March, on March the 8th. We did cycle 2 customers for the first time in over a year. And we disconnected approximately 305 accounts, totaling a past due of near $259,000. Of those, we have reconnected 190 customers. We still have 91 customers that are off at this time that we will recheck this week. And then we have about 24 accounts in which we've been notified by a property owner or new customer that the existing customer has vacated, and we've transferred services into another responsible party at this time. Currently, my staff also has about 1,936 accounts on hold still, and those are 83 business accounts and 1,853 residential accounts that we actively have payment plans on with those customers that they are paying each month. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you all have.
So the people that have the people that have made payment plans, overall, are they making their payment? Well, of course, we really don't have that much of a track record yet, do we?
No, sir, we don't. We started most of those payment plans, some in December, but most of them came in January and February, and even new ones in March. And so until we start the actual disconnect each month where we're tracking their payment, we don't have good numbers for those just yet.
Okay. Any other board members have questions for Cassie? What's the likelihood, do you think, Cassie or David, of getting the 2.7 million where we're sitting right now down in the where we usually are, the $780,000 range? That's another 1.9 million, and we've come down what, 500,000? I know there's another round of stimulus money that's out there that could help some people with, you know, past due rent or utilities or whatever. But what do you think the likelihood of getting down to where we are and recovering that last 1.9 million is?
I think after March, if the weather holds up and we continue our service disconnection procedures, I think we'll have much more clarity a month from now. As you can see on, I think it's page 56, page 57, how it's lumping our past due balances into ranges of how long it's been since the customer made a payment. I think when you start getting above 90 and above, you're starting to look at potential uncollectible issues there. It's worth noting that for those watching that might be having trouble or issues with paying their FPB bill, that we are still working with customers, as we always do, to try to get established payment plans to get you back up to date. There are many different utility assistance programs out there right now. The Kentucky Healthy at Home it's Eviction Relief Fund is a very generous fund that goes all the way back, I believe, to past due rent and utility from April 1 of last year and 3 months forward. That's for renters, but that's a big one. If you reach out to Rosam and Bluegrass Community Action, they do have a lot of assistance there. And for any of our customers that are watching that are wondering what they can do to help, that would definitely be something that that I know people would appreciate. FPB has our power certificates where you can give us a credit that we can apply to a customer's bill that might be in need. And we also have our roundup program that will round your bill each month to the next dollar. And all those funds from all roundup customers are contributed to the Bluegrass Community Action Winter Care Fund. So those are just a few things that we could do to help. And we'll be updating the board every month on these. So hopefully we'll everyone will be able to keep up with their arrangements, and we'll see towards the end of this fiscal year, we'll have a good feeling, I believe, on where we stand with bad debt for the year.
And David, you and Cassie, I hate to admit this publicly, but I've actually read most of the American Rescue Plan. And there's two specific sections. There's one in there for homeowners and utilities, and there's another pot of money for renters and utilities. And I know U.S. Treasury hadn't issued the guidance for all that yet, but there's two significant major pots of federal money that are in there that are going to be flowing to all the states that might be able to help our customers once they issue that guidance.
Yes, and I know that the city, that's there's on the back of that, the city and county are applying for funds as well. That's coming in the months ahead. But so for anyone out there listening that is having trouble, there are a lot of programs. There's of course, income and different qualifications for each. But if you look out there, there's a lot of them to take advantage of if you qualify. So that's really the summer we had on the past dues. I'd be glad to answer any more questions or talk just for a brief moment about our financials.
Any other questions first, David? From any board members, any more questions for Cassie or David on the past dues and anything else related to that topic? Okay, if not, David, you want to give us an overview of our financial situation?
Yes, sir. I'll be very brief. So what we've got in your board packet tonight is financials through our 8th month of operation for this fiscal year through February 28th of 2021. In your board packet, we have all of our statement of net position and statement of revenues, expenses, and change in net position. All of our check registers for our two most active accounts, a summary of our sales of assets for the year, and also some reconciliations in there on our bank accounts as well. As you can see that we're doing better than we expected budget-wise. Budget to actual better in revenue, led by electric and telecom departments, and the remaining keep cost under control and below budget as well. So that's contributing to a positive net position above budget. So things are going well, and I know we're moving into the budget season, which we'll talk later about in the meeting tonight. But I'd be glad to answer any detailed questions you might have about our financials through February.
Okay, any questions of David? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the financials as presented?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, no. Financials are accepted. Thank you, Mr. Denton. Okay, the next item is public comments. Ms. Poe, do we have anyone?
The only thing I have is the email that I sent to the board members from Commissioner Unger.
Okay.
I don't know if you want what you want me to do with that. It was about the Apogee report.
Right, and we're not actually conducting a public hearing tonight on that. We've got her comment, and it's fairly short. Do you have it there in front of you?
I do, yes.
I think you probably ought to read it into the record.
Okay. This is from Commissioner Unger, came in today, March the 16th. Says, as a Frankfort City Commissioner and lifelong resident of Frankfort, I wanted to share my support for the report presented by Apogee Climate and Energy Solutions. I have read the report and met with Mr. McDonald and Mr. Baldwin for a presentation. As the capital city of Kentucky, I would like to see us lead the way in the discussion on renewable energy sources and reducing our greenhouse emissions. Just today, I heard about an Arkansas school district that has been able to save on utilities with a solar project they started and have given their teachers significant raises. I hope the FPB will support the community in this effort as the governing bodies in local school districts discuss this opportunity. We must continue this conversation, plan for our future, and act soon. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next item, item 7. Any website customer comments?
We had 3. They were all 3 in your board package. One was a complimentary comment about Miss Estel, And then we had 2 on internet. One was about service pricing, and then a customer who had issues with their internet, which it's my understanding they've all been addressed.
Okay. And then last month, we did have that one website comment that you sent out to the board after that. So everybody should have gotten that.
Yes.
Okay. Departmental reports, event.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, board. I'll just briefly kind of touch all of our different departments and the operations that we've been working on for the past month. I'll start with telecom. That report is on pages 131 to 134 in your board package. Just a summary on that. The next band construction is currently going on in part of Indian Hills and Ridgeview. That's node 14. And we've also started work over on Shadrick Ferry. And with the engineering and design group that was approved, we are meeting and coordinating with them and starting to work towards that situation where they're helping us with the engineering going forward. We're also working on the installs of what we were calling friendly customers that are what you would call beta customers in the phase 1 area. So we're starting to do some installs on those to start to iron out some of those kind of bugs. So the next band stuff is moving along. The other thing I'd like to talk a little bit about, and it affected all the different departments, but we'll touch on cable's portion here, is the flooding that we saw. Julie Roney, the water treatment plant superintendent, provided me some statistics. She said the rainfall measured 5.01 inches with 2.58 inches falling on February the 28th. And a result of that rainfall, of course, we had the 9th highest crest at lock and dam number 4 for the first week of March. So with that rising river, we had issues at a couple of different river crossings when the boat dock broke loose and came down the river. It created some issues with some of our line crossings. So we had our telecom department and our electric department went out and basically beat the barge down the river, and we raised our things temporarily to allow the barge to pass under. And so we were able to keep from having any service interruptions there. We also assisted AT&T, which was on one of those poles, to make sure that, not only did they not have issues, but if they had issues and it pulled their lines down, it would pull the poles down that our stuff is on as well. So we all kind of worked together as a group to make sure that that happened. So, but other than that, the cable department really didn't have any other, telecom department didn't have any other issues. So we're going to look at permanently increasing the clearance on a number of those crossings and see if we can try to alleviate this kind of issue before. Now we get up into the 48 feet and some of those, there's not much we can do about some of those things. And normally we don't have large obstructions like that come through the river. But anyway, we're going to try to be more prepared with raising some of these things for future flooding events, which we know eventually will come. The electric department had to pull 8 meters due to the high water. And again, they pitched in and helped us get all the lines, the telecommunications lines, up in the air a little higher. The high water did not affect the water treatment plant as far as its day-to-day operations, except for the elevated turbidity required higher than normal treatment and chemical usage. But that we kind of see that fairly regularly as spring hits. You will get much more turbidity water. After the water receded, we've inspected the areas where our pole crossings were and at the water treatment plant, and we don't see any slides or pending slides that would cause an issue. So I think we made it through there pretty good. And as fast as the river came down, that usually can be a concern. But I think we're okay on that situation. Moving on to the electric department report, that was 139 to 142 in your packet. The Tiger grant, we are gearing up to start the electric portion of that to replace the poles and conductor from Taylor Avenue to Bridge Street. I think that's about 12 weeks out for the electric department. Of course, the water department is currently working on that. So we're getting prepared for that. The materials are coming in and those kind of things. On the AMI project, we are preparing for next month's pilot deployment. We have started to finalize our communication materials that we're going to provide to customers about the project. That includes the benefits to the customers, where they can go for more information, et cetera. So we are finalizing those kind of things so that our customers are fully aware and are kind of brought along as we move that project along. So the SEPA report is 143 to 145, and for January we made $81,136. So that was good for January. And then the water distribution report is 149 to 151. The water construction crews, they've installed 1,000 feet now of 12-inch water main from Taylor Avenue to Bridge Street as part of the Tiger Grant project. And then they've also installed another 900 feet of 12-inch for a new warehouse development for another customer. And so those are two large projects. Usually don't have a lot of 12-inch going in at one time, but we are, and those projects are going well, and things are moving. The reservoir project, we currently have received approval from the FCC and the FAA to proceed with the new off-air tower, and we're currently waiting on the geotech to get the bid specs together so that project can be put out on bid. So we are progressing on moving that tower, taking the one down and putting the new one up. On the reservoir itself, yes, sir.
If you could on that one, Dawn, are you getting information so you can share it with the neighborhood on that new tower?
I haven't, no.
I'm just saying, Ben, you might want to make sure Dawn's kind of up on that, so if she gets questions or where she can kind of let them know what's going on there.
Okay, we don't really have anything to share on that. We just finally had the approval, but now we're putting together the bid specs and it'll go out on bid. But we'll make sure that they're kept in the loop. I understand what you're asking for. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. So on the reservoir itself, we were asked to extend the bid date by 1 week for contractors so that they had ample time to respond. After speaking with our engineering firm Strand that's working with us on that, it's determined that a 1 week extension would not affect the schedule, and as an effort to get as many competitive bids as we possibly could, we decided to add an addendum and extend the bid date from 3/12 to 3/19. So 3 more days from now, that bid will close. The milestone date is still the same, December 15th, and that will be with grading, and the walls, landscaping, and stuff will follow after the 12/15, but the new tank should be in service by 12/15, December 15th of this year. So, and then just the water treatment plant, they treated 198.95 million gallons of water and averaged 7.11 million gallons a day. And I'd just like to make one comment kind of in closing here is the past few weeks have been rather hectic for all the departments of the Frankfort Plant Board. If you remember, we experienced an ice storm and then a flood event the very next week, and that's Kentucky weather. You know, everything's different. I figured we'd have a tornado this week the way things were going. But so not only did all the departments involved keep up all their normal workload, and it does take a lot of work to keep all of our services going every day. I think it's easy to forget that. But not only did they keep all that going, they were out there responding to all those weather events that were happening, you know, week after week. So they were able to do that, and almost none of our customers experienced any service impacts through the ice storms, the floods, and everything else. So I just wanted to take a minute and say that I really think they did an excellent job through those kind of things. Most people don't even notice their utilities, and you know that's good. That's how it should be. It's just something you take for granted, but they really put in a lot of work the last couple of weeks. So I just want to tell them how much we do appreciate their hard work and their dedication to our customers. So with that comment, I really that would kind of finalize the operations report. I'd be happy to answer any questions the board might have.
I think I might just add, and the rest of the board members, I know want to chime in, how much we appreciate the staff and what they do every single day out there, because I think you're exactly right. People take for granted that they turn the faucet on, the water comes out, they flip a switch, the lights are on, no matter what the weather, no matter what's going on. And, you know, I hear things from time to time, how much people appreciate the fact that we respond quickly and everything else. So they do a great job, and anybody else wants to say anything else there too. So
I just wanted to say whoever was out there in the boat on the river deserves a Medal of Honor because that water was moving.
Yes, and Chair,
yeah, they all did a great job.
Also, my thanks to how phenomenal the staff has been, and particularly during this back-to-back crisis.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it's amazing how it's almost they do such a great job and they respond to so many things. You don't want to take it for granted. I'm glad you were able to recognize them. Ben, I'm glad you were able to recognize them too. I think it goes without saying how much we appreciate all of them.
I echo the same.
And I hear the same thing, but especially I hear people talk about how much they appreciate the knock. I mean, that doesn't matter what time, day or night they call, they talk to somebody. Since the board made a decision, some time ago to bring that back in house, when they talk to somebody, they know exactly where it is here in Frankfurt. They get right on it. They're very polite, professional, so they do a great job.
John,
Yeah,
along
they're in Rainbow with his staff.
along that line, you talk to people who, some of the people that love Plan Board more than anything else, as much as people may want to complain about the Plan Board, you get people who've lived in Frankfurt and moved to other places and have other, especially cables. I mean, it's not even close. It's not even close, the kind of service we get.
So, Vint, Gary, make sure you express to staff how much we appreciate them.
Yes, sir. We'll do that.
Next item, if there's any other questions for Vint. If not, item 9.1, Hans, talk about changes to the financial disclosure form and accept the minutes from the last ethics committee.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. The ethics committee met on the 26th to review the disclosure forms. Had a good meeting. They're a very, very good group of people. Good discussion. I certainly appreciate their input. Appreciate their time. I know the board does as well. They made some suggestions to the disclosure form that are there in the board package. Mr. Cubine and I discussed one of them, which was a requirement to sign the form under a penalty of perjury. And I kind of looked at some of that from a legal perspective. Perjury requires an oath. Chapter 65, which is what requires the disclosure form, doesn't mention an oath. The city's form doesn't mention an oath. Mr. Cubine and I talked a little bit about it. He shared with me a statute that he dealt with the auditor's office about forgery, which is if you provide false information, why that's a felony. So there's some significant gravity to signing the form. So I think just a statement at the end of the form, which I have there in the package, that I certify that it's true and correct to the best of my knowledge will suffice. So that was the only modification that I kind of made to the suggestions there. Made the other corrections that the committee noted, and would just ask that the board move to accept the minutes of the committee and the changes that were suggested to the form. Thank you.
And this continues us to be in compliance and compatible with the city ethics policy, correct?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Any questions for Hans? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion to accept both accept the minutes and to make the modifications to the disclosure form that Hans just described?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. We've adopted the minutes and the changes to the form. Next is consider approving RFD TV renewal. Harvey Couch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Staff recommends approving the RFD TV renewal. This is an NCTC agreement with a term through March 31st of 2025. FPB currently carries RFD on from the local broadcast channels and the cable networks. And if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind. I'd like to share just a couple graphs to kind of show visually some of the things that we've seen over a trend. So let's see, there we go. Everybody see that? So we'll start here. Here's just a look at the rate increases. You can see there's no change on our limited cable. Classic cable is just the cable network pass-through fee, and then the reduction on HBO, and then the bulk 1 and 2 increases, and then the retrans surcharge. This is a graph that we update every year, and it seems it's more it's more drastic every year. So the blue line is what our retail rate is for classic cable over the last 18 years. The orange line is what the associated programming cost for the channels that are carried on on classic cable. And the green line is the difference between those two numbers, the amount that stays here in Frankfurt for the Frankfurt Plant Board to run the cable system. And you can see that that number has actually shrunk by almost $3 over the last 18 years. So basically every increase over the last 18 years has been tied to the increased programming cost and not any additional expenses on the plant board side.
So bottom line is, from our standpoint, over the last period of time you just described, our costs have gone down roughly $36, would have gone down $36 a year. So the increased money that people were paid for cable is all money that we've simply had to pay to bring the programming in, not money that we kept ourselves.
Right. I mean, I like to talk about it as that that's money that's leaving Frankfurt. You know, that's going to New York and Los Angeles and Chicago and Lexington and other places to pay for those channels. This is the same data, just shown as a percentage, and you can see that we're down to 13% of the cable bill staying here in Frankfurt. And then finally, this is just to look at the retrans surcharge, the money that's being charged by the local broadcasters for our customers to receive those channels, the increases that have been seen since 2008. So we'll share this information with the folks at the newspaper, and just wanted you guys to see it visually. That's what's driving these increases.
Is it fair to say, Harvey, that if people, not calling them out, but people who would have our competitors' products, that they've seen the same increases in their bills because of the same reasons?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everybody's dealing with the same. I mean, the content providers need to get paid for their stuff, and you're seeing that across the board. DirecTV raises their rates every single year. Hulu Live and YouTube TV both had pretty significant increases, over 15% each over the last 12 months. Even Netflix and Disney Plus, these over-the-top services, they're getting increases just about every year. So just the cost of content is going up, and unfortunately we're passing that on to our customers. And yeah, we're not the only ones that are having to deal with the challenge.
And we give our customers one other point. Now I'll turn it over to the rest of the board. For a lot of our competitors, we give our customers 7 choices of local programming, of local network programming, and a lot of our competitors only give a couple options, right?
Yeah, I think I can say pretty confidently that we're the only provider in Frankfurt that is offering the Louisville channels. The satellite companies and the over-the-top providers don't choose not to, but are not allowed to in a lot of ways to bring out-of-market content that we are as a local operator. So that's a good point. Thank you.
The rest of the board? Okay, any other questions that we need to? So at this point, let's see.
Hey, John.
Yes.
John has one.
John, I got a question. I just got a comment and a question, or actually just more of a comment. I served on a cable advisory board back in a previous life, and I remember the good old days when we could, if we could catch somebody's signal, they could require us to carry it, but we didn't pay for it. And seems like a long ago time, but it was just 12, 14 years ago that was the case. And we've seen this, graph spike up the way it has. I want to, rail, I'll take my time to rail against that a little bit. And these are really, really getting out of hand. And as we go forward in the future, I was just, I about this time last year, I raised the specter of maybe dropping the Louisville channels because we didn't know if we could afford them or not. And
right.
We're really, really concerned. I want to compliment Harvey and the cable folks who got in there, and the NCTC helped a lot too, I'm sure, with the negotiations. But the fact that we were able to maintain those Louisville channels and did what we needed to do with WDRB and all that stuff with their carriage, I just want to compliment them because that is a tough nut to crack, and it's a big selling point for our cable, like you said, Harvey, versus those other providers. A lot of people like that Louisville content. Folks like me grew up in Louisville. It means a lot to us. Getting the weather out of there, coming this way is a big thing. So I just want to compliment him on getting us set for another 3 years. I don't know what the future is going to hold, but at least we're set for another 3 years.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions? Okay, if not, I need a motion on the approval of item number 9.3.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion, number 9.3 is approved. Thanks, Harvey. Okay, number 9.4, consider award of bid invitation number 1709 for one medium power transformer to Virginia Transformer Corporation, an amount of $581,075. Couldn't get that last $75 off, huh, Travis?
No, perhaps we could have tried harder. We could have rounded it off. But again, good evening, members of the board. Staff prepared an invitation for one substation medium power transformer, publicly advertised it along with distributing to potential vendors. In total, 9 responses were received. After reviewing the bids, staff recommends awarding to Virginia Transformer in the amount of $581,075 for the delivery of 25 to 26 weeks. The bids were evaluated on a total ownership cost formula, which assigns a dollar value for energy losses over the life of the transformer. The cost formula was used to evaluate all vendors and was provided to the potential bidders in the invitation. So based on this evaluated cost, Virginia Transformer submitted the lowest bid and met the specifications. This will be a budgeted purchase for the T23 replacement project. So we're replacing existing equipment here. It's included in the existing budget, page 16, line 105, which has $1.44 million budgeted this year for the project. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of Travis? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? Okay, if not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing none, motion's approved. Thanks, Travis. Number 9.5, Nichelle, consider amendments to the job classification and compensation plans, create IT security analyst and IT network engineer positions, and reclassify IT systems engineer position. And correct me if I'm wrong, Nichelle and David, this was included in our budget when we approved the budget in June, wasn't it?
Yes, sir. This is included in the budget on that summary section.
Okay. Nichelle, you want to take it?
Yes, good evening again. Staff asked the board to consider approving the creation of the IT security analyst and the IT network engineer position, as well as the reclassification of the IT system engineer position. The IT security analyst position will be responsible for the continued maturity of FPB security controls and provide leadership and regulatory compliance assessments. The IT network engineer position will assist in design, deployment, and maintenance of FPB corporate and internet services. The IT systems engineer position is a rename and reclassification of the senior system analyst position, which now includes supervisor duties. Based on an evaluation of each job description, the recommended classification of IT security analyst is a grade 115 with a minimum starting pay of $70,520.33. The IT network engineer and IT systems engineer position such have a recommended classification of a grade 116 with a minimum starting pay of $75,254.11. All 3 positions are exempt. The proposed job description, organizational chart, and list of authorized positions for IT are included in the detailed pages for this board item. Also, prior to the board meeting, I did send a corrected organizational chart to all of the board members. If approved, staff plans to post the 2 new positions for internal and external candidates simultaneously. The reclassified position is currently filled and would not be posted. FPB included these positions and reclassification in the current budget, as David mentioned earlier. Does the board have any questions?
I might just point out, and Gary, if you want to, or Casey, or follow up on that, I think it's important for the public to know that we currently have IT security. This is an enhancement of our current security. We're not actually starting security for the first time. We've got security systems in place. This is actually adding additional resources to security. Is that correct?
Chairman, that's definitely correct. Absolutely. And but I can ask our IT director help us to go over the detail if you like to. And I think overall our IT security system in place, we were never perfect, but I think we can handle the current where we are. As you know, when there was a case happening in Tampa, Florida, it's make all the utility in this country look into even further, how do we enhance our security? That's a kind of part of the program. I'm glad you as a board approved last year. This is a part of the process. I will happy to answer any question, and IT can provide much detailed information if you need to.
Okay, any questions for Nichelle, Gary, or Casey from any board members? Okay, seeing none, although, do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Hey, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Seeing none, it's approved. The positions, the amendments to the job classification plan are approved. Thanks, Nichelle. Okay, the next one is number 9.6, consider approval of agreement with Groves Construction and Bowling Companies for storm response. Mr. Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, board members. Staff is asking the board to accept the rate sheet submitted by Groves Constructions and the Bowling Companies in the event that FPB would need assistance during an emergency outage restoration such as a storm. These rate sheets must be on file for FPB to be eligible for FEMA reimbursements. This has been reviewed and approved by staff attorney, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
And this is a standing contract we do every year. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
And we only incur cost if we activate it. Is that correct?
That is correct. And we hope and knock on wood that we'll never have to use them.
Okay. Okay. Any board members have questions of Scott? Okay. If not, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Approval of the agreement. Agreement's approved. Thank you. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Informational items. First one is the fiscal year 21-22 budget preparation. Mr. Denton has sent us a budget timeline, preparation timeline. And I think that all I want to say, and I'll turn it over to David, was now's important that if any of you all have questions that you need answered, background information, things you've seen that you want to follow up on, things you're interested in seeing in the budget, whatever, feel free to communicate that to either David or Gary so they can be working on it. And that way they can, if there's duplicate requests, whoever can work through those. But if you've got some ideas, go on and let them know what you're interested in and what you want priced out or whatever. So when we start getting into the detail, they can actually do the research and have that information for you. David, you want to take it?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for that, Mr. Cubine. Yeah. The sooner any board members have any requests, that definitely helps us out and can be able to give that information back and forth. And even if the board would like to take a vote on something to be included even prior to review, we can have that included in the draft that we would get to the board. I think the biggest thing I would ask is just on the schedule, proposed budget schedule on page 183 of the board packet, we have put down a date of June the 2nd. It's a Wednesday from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. To have meetings between staff and the board to go over the budget draft and have our back and forth discussions we have every year. And just wanted to see if you can look at your schedule and see if that would work for everyone, or if you would like to propose an alternative day so we can make sure all of our staff here and go ahead and get that on the calendar.
And that'd be like a work session?
Yes, sir. We last year we were able to do it in an afternoon. So we think from 1 to 5, between all the conversation we'll have prior, that we can get through it, be able to discuss our goals and budgets for each of the divisions and departments, and be a good launching pad for the approval that we'll be requesting on June 15th at our regular board meeting in June.
Does that June 2nd, if everybody, you don't have to necessarily say now, if everybody would take a look and communicate back to David, maybe if you could by the end of the week, let him know if that second works for you, and then we can go on and put that down on the calendar.
Other than that, just for the viewing public, that we have a budget year. It's a July to June fiscal year. We are considered a special purpose governmental entity, so there are a set of guidelines we must follow on budget prep. We have to have our budget approved by the board by the end of the fiscal year, June 30th each year. So that'll be our goal, is just to get that budget in place for the next year. I'd be glad to answer any questions or any details you might want to hear other than that.
I guess two of the key issues, well, three key issues. Obviously, when you get the information on KEMI and there's the rates, which will play into, what that looks like, and your work, you and Michelle's work in terms of looking at what's going on salary-wise with other entities. And then also the information in terms of what we're going to look like in terms of health insurance. And I guess we're still on the phase-in schedule for CERS retirement, right?
Yes, sir. I believe that the rate is set around at 26.95 for next year, I believe.
Okay.
So
now, are those, in terms of, that's kind of the major, and then the other items, I mean, you'll have the big items in there in terms of the reservoir and fiber to the home, the AMI project, and so forth.
Yes, sir. Those are the big ones. I think the reservoir bid, that'll give us more clarity here soon as to what that is going to cost. We have a pretty good feel on what the cost is on the AMI and telecom. Other than that, I think as we move through the bad debt discussion again, or the past due bills to get a feel, we're below budget as of now. So those are a few of the things that we'll be keeping an eye on. But considering what we've come through and where we are, I think, we're in good shape. The budget from last year has a one-year budget approved and then a plan. So you can look at last year's budget and our current financials and get a good feel for where we're going to end up.
I guess one of the most volatile things out there is going to be fuel prices.
It is definitely going to increase. I remember back when it was getting $4 a gallon years ago. You do see it go up substantially, but in the total budget, it doesn't really start to raise an eye as opposed to some of these large projects.
Right. Any other questions for David at this point, or just, like I said, feel free, just, pass on to him, to Gary, things you need, information you need, and that way they can kind of be a clearinghouse and get whatever information you need from any departments or whatever that you want to take a look at or get more information.
Thanks.
Okay. Next item, Mr. Billings, the ongoing saga of the reservoir wheel, piston, and marker.
Yes, sir. Good evening, board. How is everybody? I'll be brief. At the last board meeting, we talked about getting a quote for sandblasting and painting. I reached out to a local contractor, gave us a quote of $5,000 for sandblasting and painting, but he was immediately worried about handling and transporting the wheel. So I had Mr. Bourne go up and take a look at it, and the water department is also concerned about trying to move this. Took some pictures, and there's a crack. Can everybody see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's a crack at the bottom where it's in the concrete. Here's another crack that's been repaired previously. You can tell that's at about the 4 o'clock position. This, another crack, that's about the 10:30 position. There's also another one for some reason. Oops. Have several cracks that we're all concerned about. I guess at this point, being that we need to move this for the project, staff's recommending that we take it apart as gingerly as we can, move it to the water treatment plant, determine how what kind of shape it remains in after it's been removed, and then we'll take a look, see if it can be salvageable or just scrap it.
Now the piston and the marker, they'll have to be moved, but there's no problem with those. Those in terms of moving them and replacing them shouldn't be a problem, right?
I don't foresee a problem, no, sir.
And the wheel, maybe part of it could be salvaged or whatever, but it looks kind of questionable whether the whole thing as it currently sits could be saved, right?
I would be concerned with erecting it like it is somewhere close. You have vehicle traffic. I'm afraid if a car were to bump into it, it might fall apart.
Okay. Any questions for David? So I guess at this point, this is informational. The next thing will be just once you get it moved and at the water treatment, you all can inspect it, then you come back to us with kind of an assessment, some options of what may be done. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you will be moving the piston and the marker.
Yes,
to the treatment also. Okay. Okay. Any other questions for David? Okay. Next item is the signage at the US 127 water tank. Miss Lindsay.
Hello. We have some things to report. Hans talked with Laura Ross at the city, and they have come to an agreement. I think that as long as it isn't advertising that subjects it to billboard regulations, they don't think the city has a problem with it. Eric Cockley is also in on that. They did ask that Eric would like to see the final design to be sure, though, when we get to that point.
Okay.
I did send him the mock-ups that we looked at last month, and I also sent them to Tommy Russell and to Blair Hecker at the city. So I also sent those to Susie at the chamber, and she loved, of course, the city's logo, which is the Frankfort, Kentucky Distilled, and that's something that the chamber had a part of, and would love to see that on a water tower. They have not very many funds in their branding fund. So, but she said, she's still interested in it, but she didn't want to make any decisions because at that time, the new director hadn't been announced yet. So now the chamber has hired a new director, and she started yesterday. Her name is Tish Shade. And I have a meeting with her on Friday, just as a chamber board member. And I will put this on my list of things to discuss with her among just some other partnerships that we've had with the chamber in the past. So that's on Friday. I've done some email polling of civic groups for feedback through the Optimist Club, Rotary, Kiwanis, and then a PTA group that I'm in. And so far, all the feedback has been unanimously positive that they would love to see something on the water tank. I sent some ideas that it could be Frankfort on Tap or Frankfort, Kentucky Distilled or Welcome to Frankfort. And, everybody has a different opinion about what it should be, but they all are in agreement that it'd be nice to have something on the water tank. So David Billings got some updated estimates for us, and it's cheaper than we thought it was going to be. So that's good.
What describe cheap?
It ranging anywhere from $2,500 to $4,500.
Depending on whether we go up and paint it ourselves?
Depending on which logo we go with.
Okay.
But I don't want to skew any polling efforts right now.
Yeah. So in terms of polling, where are you at in terms of reaching out and getting feedback?
Yeah, that's, again, I've gotten the feedback from the civic clubs, and I haven't done anything public yet because I was really waiting to kind of get something more definite from the city before I did that. And also, again, I don't want to make it too public yet until we know that it's a possibility. So it's looking like it's going to be a possibility. So we can do a survey that we can send out or put on our website. I would really like to avoid social media for this because you just don't know what you're going to get on social media.
Yeah.
I'd like it to be a more direct, serious, polling.
Okay. Any questions or comments for Kathy? And I guess what you're looking for at this point is we're not taking any formal vote or whatever, but you're
Not
just
taking
looking
a
at
formal vote. What we're gonna do is, I'm waiting back for one thing from the city, just because I have sent them the mock-ups to make sure that Eric is good with the possibilities of those. And then after that, we'll do some other kind of more broad survey, and maybe we'll come back with a recommendation in May, and then
Okay.
move forward with, and we'll get it done this summer.
Okay. Does anybody have make sure Hans, don't let me do something wrong here. Does anyone have a problem or concern with Kathy proceeding to gather information and get the feedback and get some sense from the community in terms of their thoughts and preferences? Is that okay for her to continue? Can I ask that question, Hans?
Yes, sir. I think so. If I might chip in.
Sure.
The billboard advertising issue that Kathy talked about, Mr. Schneider last meeting, I'm not that bill that goes through. I hope that bill goes through because it really clarifies what is and what is not.
Actually, one of my analysts on my staff just walked in. She was the drafter of that particular piece of legislation, and the House just approved it. And essentially, under the new law, it'll be a billboard if it's essentially the sign is, you take money for putting the sign up. Our original law that we had was based on premise versus off premise, and the courts didn't like that because it got into content, and that was regulating content. But if you pay money, or if you accept money to put up a sign, that makes it a commercial enterprise, and commercial speech is they're more open to regulation of commercial speech. So, but if that's the case, based on this, we wouldn't be taking any money for it. So it should not qualify as a billboard, I don't think.
Fantastic. That's great news.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
Okay. Any comments, direction for Kathy? If not, I think you're proceed on with your data gathering.
Okay, great.
Okay. Thank you. Next item is the Apogee Solar Report. As you all know, you all got a copy of this several weeks ago, and I know you all read it. And Gary and the staff have been looking at it, and I'll turn it over to Gary at this point, kind of give us the status, and then open up for any board members that might have any questions. To this is just an informational item. We don't have the report in front of us tonight for any type of action. We don't have all the analysis before us at this point. So it's informational, but Gary, you want to take it from here?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We received this report early March, I think March 1st, after the presentation, and we download and we share with all the board member staff, share that same with the KYMEA. And one thing I do want to put it on is the people prepared the report, Ms. McDonough and other people, they probably spend a lot of time on that based on the report. I suspect, that's my personal opinion, they probably spend a month of it studying. One position I like to mention, I'm pretty sure you agree with me. The plan board, actually, we really like increase our renewable as much as we can, as long as we don't have to increase our rate. And KYMA currently has a contract. They're going to have a 54 megawatts solar start at 2022. And is a pretty low cost solar on the KYMA portion. I think
Brandon,
what I can say is
Danny, you got a second?
I can say they are in the low, in the 3 cents power. I mean, it's a very low cost currently in the current QMEA. But do we like the solar locally? Yes, if we can. So this is a very, staff will take that very seriously. Hope we can study it thoroughly. And one thing staff would like to do is you make sure we are not only just look at ourselves. We certainly hope we can ask the consultant help us because we don't want to delay the result. And we hope one of the best consultants we know in this field can help us to guide us move further. And I will happy to answer any question. What I hope is in April, we can have the fully report present to you, let you to make a decision.
And you've communicated, my understanding is you have communicated with the school districts and the city and so forth in terms of that we're working to get them an analysis and we'll share that with them when we have it. Is that correct?
Yes, I sent a letter to the superintendents and city manager and county judge.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And you're getting, like I said, you're getting the analysis and we'd have that on the April agenda. And we'd have that report so the board could review it ahead of time and we could discuss it at that time. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions for Gary or Vin at this point?
I don't have a question. I have
Sure.
a few comments. I just wanted to say that I applaud the vision of any project that would move Frankfort toward lowering its carbon footprint. And I appreciate the expertise and time that Annie McDonald and Walt Baldwin took in developing and then presenting this project. Like Gary said, it was just at the very beginning of this month. I like the fact that during his presentation, Mr. McDonald did point out that the only reason that a net metering project can even be considered is because the Frankfort Plant Board has a current net metering policy. This might potentially need a different type of policy, but it wouldn't even be possible if there hadn't been the foresight and actually kind of the bravery of the plant board several years back for initiating and breaking ties with KU and joining KYMEA. I also appreciate that prompted by one of the participants at the presentation's question, Mr. McDonald did acknowledge that the Ashwood Solar Project and KYMEA's increase even more recently in its reliance on this green energy project will be coming to fruition within a year or so. As Gary already said, that, you know, the plant board received this report and responded immediately that we are taking it very seriously and want to give it its due consideration and you know, and analyze it as it properly should. So I just do want to appreciate their efforts and hope they'll be patient while we give it due consideration.
Okay. Any other board comments, questions? Okay, then at this point, Gary, then that will definitely, Ms. Poe, that will definitely be on the agenda for April. And then Gary, as soon as you can get us that analysis, you know, get it out to us so everybody can review it beforehand. And certainly when we post the next agenda for the next meeting, which would be what, Kathy, usually that Thursday before?
It'll be Friday, looks like the 16th.
So that would be what, at the latest then when we post that the report would be out there for at least what, 1, 2, 3, at least about four days or so before the next meeting, right?
Yes.
Okay. Does that work for everyone?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Next item is request permission to have the chair call for a closed session pursuant to KRS 61.8101C to discuss pending or proposed litigation regarding subcontractor lien and subrogation matter. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? We're going into closed session. in favor say aye. To open session, Mr. Snyder.
Mr. Chairman, I would direct that the FPB attorney proceed as according to the instructions given to him in closed session.
Okay. All those in, do we need a motion and second on that, Hans?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Do we need a second?
So move.
Okay. We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion's adopted. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
Okay. Any objections? We're adjourned. Thank you all.
See you guys.
Okay.
Good night, everyone.